to all. Our team is here to talk about international human resource development practices and policies prevailing in New Zealand. The first topic we are going to discuss is national background. New Zealand is an island country in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It consists of two main landmasses, the North Island and South Island, and over 700 smaller islands. It is the sixth largest island country by area. Jacinda K. Laurel Ardern is the Prime Minister of New Zealand and leader of Labour Party since 2017. New Zealand is officially the least corrupt nation in the world, making it a fair favorite for businesses. The small island works hard to maintain a competitive economic edge over others. Its government is welcoming to foreign businesses and investors and provides support mechanism to market entrants to prove it. New Zealand was the first country to offer state pensions and in last 1913 state housing for workers. In recent years, New Zealand has been perceived as vigorous economy and attracted international attention. New Zealand is the 27th highest in GDP per capita and 19th highest in Human Development Index. So the next topic is recruitment policies in New Zealand. In New Zealand, Employment Relations Act 2000 are very important during recruitment. This act helps to promote and regulate collective bargaining and protect an employee's choice about whether to be a member of a union or not. While recruiting, privacy and confidentiality of applicant is maintained. In case of advertising job opportunities, private sector employees do not have to advertise a vacancy unless they have a specific requirement in employment agreements or workplace policies. Some workplace employment agreements or policies state that the employer has to advertise internally before externally, or will have preference to employees who have recently been made redundant. Many employers in the public sector are required by the Public Service Act 2020 to notify a vacancy to make sure that suitable qualified applicants are aware of the vacancy. So the recruitment process in New Zealand was, there are certain processes involved in recruitment in New Zealand. They are, make an offer. First, we need to check candidate can legally work in New Zealand and offer should provided as verbal agreement or signing a letter. Sign the employment agreement is the next step. Written employment agreement should be provided. Make sure they sign the agreement. If employees start work without agreement, minimum employment standard will apply. Third step is get ready for their first day. Induction needs to be arranged and facilities should be arranged for new employees. Fourth step is complete remaining paperwork. Sign employees for Kiwi Saver if they are eligible. Have them complete tax code declaration IR 313. Then last step is settle in your new employee. In last step, HR manager should introduce them to any other duties he or she have and show them how everything works. So these are the process included in recruitment processes. Thank you.
Types of visas to New Zealand. Essential skills visa. This visa is provided to up to 5 years. People who have been offered a full-time work job and want to move to New Zealand can apply for this visa. Work visa is provided to for 30 months and people who have been offered a full-time job and wanted to eventually be in New Zealand permanently can apply for this visa. Skilled migrant visa. Indefinite period of duration. People who want to stay in New Zealand indefinitely have been offered a job and have the skills on qualifications and experience can apply for skilled migrant visa. Working holiday visa. These are provided to 12 months and 23 months for the UK and Canadian citizens. Other types of visas that are provided to New Zealand includes visas for parents and children, investment visas, Investors include $10 million for at least 3 years and minimum investment of $3 billion New Zealand dollars at least for 4 years. Students visas, business visas, entrepreneurial visas are other types of visas that are provided in New Zealand. Employees in New Zealand are entitled to a minimum of 4 weeks of annual leave and may request for up to 1 week to be changed. Country of 11 public holidays, 10 days of paid sick leaves after 6 months of service and another 10 days for 12 months of service. Employees who have worked for at least an average of 10 hours a week for 12 months or just before the expected birth of a child, 26 weeks of the government funded parental leave if they were the primary care of the child. Extra benefits can also make open positions more competitive in labor market. Possible perks include holiday bonuses, educational opportunities, transportation allowances, health insurance allowances, remote work allowances and company cars, etc.
to pay income tax. The employer will take pay tax from our salary, wages before they pay us and pay to inland revenue of your behalf. Inland revenue works out how much personal tax we have to automatically, but some people have to file an individual tax return IR3 to declare their income tax. And IR3 is a statement of how much income we have earned on the tax year at up to 1st April to 31st March. It includes money earned from a range of sources like salary and wages, overseas income, superannuation, investment and rental income. Next is filing a tax return. The most of the new arrival will need to file a tax return in the first year. Non-resident like people on work visa may need to file a tax return at the end of the tax year or when they leave New Zealand. The New Zealand government relies on tax to help fund that benefit all New Zealanders. All taxes are paid to inland revenue, the government tax department, which is also known as IRD. Next is get an IRD number. Earn income in New Zealand, you will need an IRD number. It's a tax number. If we do not have an IRD number, we will be taxed at high possible rate. Next is tax rates. In New Zealand, personal income tax rate depends on income increases. The top personal tax rate is 39% and the lower tax rate is 10.5% and the companies and corporate are taxed at a flat rate of 28%. Next, employees alcohol and drug test. An employer may only require employees and other workers to submit to alcohol or drug test if this is a condition of their appointment and record in the employment agreement or other documents. Workplace is safety sensitivity that take in an employment agreement or workplace policy which allow of drug testing make an instruction of an employee to undergo drug test more reasonable. Using drugs or alcohol can lead an employee impairment while at work. The next one is the personal relationship. If a personal relationship at work or outside work create a problem such as conflict of interest or breach of trust, then the employer may need to know, the employer may take appropriate steps to minimize the conflict such as moving the employee of different team.
Policy, procedures, rules, code and guidelines. It covers the following points: conduct health and safety, workplace changes, lateness and absence, IT usage, conflict and interest discipline gift, privacy, training and development, flexibility, managing performance issues, overtime. These all items are covered. Health benefit, health and safety. The Health and Safety at the Work Act 2015 and related regulation apply to employees and contractors. That is, the Act and related regulation require the workers and other are given a high level of potential from workplace health and safety risks, so far as the reasonable practicables. This includes risks are both physical and mental health. Then other factors are, first one, business or undertaking duties. Person conducting a business or undertaking the PCBU as the primary duty of care, the primary responsibility for people's health and safety at work. In general, this means it must to ensure the health and safety of its workers, any other workers it influences or directors and other peoples who could be put in the risky had the work carried out. Its measures are providing and maintaining safe planned and structures. Then third point, safe system of work. Fourth one, adequate facilities for the welfare of the workers at work. Then second point, workers' duty. The workers must take reasonable care of their own health and safety and reasonable care of their other and not harmed by something they do or don't do. They must also follow any reasonable instructions give to them the PCBU and cooperate with any reasonable health and safety policy or procedures. And third one, officer's duty. The officer's duty, a person is an officer if they have a possible that are allowed to the exercise significant influence over the management of a business. Typically, an officer is a director, chief executive or a general partner in limited partnership. The role of officer is exercised due to diligence to ensure that the business meeting the health and safety obligations under the Health and Safety at Work Act. Training and development. Training and development program is the most effective way to grow employment performance. First one, formal learning. It gives technical skill, theory and explanation that ability apply directly to that the employees is doing at the time. And second one, training. Training refers to the process of getting the skill required for a certain job. It is formal learning targeting specific activities. For example, understanding a process or how to operate a certain machine or system. Then, third one, coaching. Coaching is a form of development in which a person called a coach support a learner to achieve a specific personal or professional goal. This 3 item is the development program. The next one, employee manual. Employee manual, it gives the employee a detailed overview of policies that are specific to your organization along with the other key procedures, guidelines and employees. Then next topic, probationary period. Probationary period, trial and probationary period can be used to make sure an employee can do the job. This must be agreed in the employment agreement. Can be used to find out an employee can do a new job for employees who are changing jobs within the same employer. Probationary period must be in the employment agreement. The trial period can only be used for up to 90 days. A probationary period is not limited to 90 days, so it could be potential to use for a longer assessment period if agreed and reasonable. And the probationary period must be based on the Workers Act and agreement. Thank you.
Hello everyone. When coming to Newsline way of working, one thing your employer will and work colleague will be looking for is the positive can-do attitude that made Kiwis well-liked employees wherever they travel. Kiwi style business, one thing that has a big impact on our particular way of working is the size of business and organization. A huge number of Newsline businesses average under 14 employees, that's about half the average of businesses in the USA. Even the big businesses are small by international standard. Next is smaller scale, greater involvement. The smaller scale of our businesses affect working lifestyle in several ways. You are closer to senior people who make the decisions in our organization. That can be real advantage, and because it means there is more chance you can be noticed and have influence on the things that they made. Smaller businesses mean less specialization. As a result, you will probably be challenged to do a wider range of things related to your role. That will give you opportunities to expand your skill and skill sets. Next is unstructured independent working. Newsline have a strong independent way of working that affects the way of like to be managed and the management style you are likely to find at work. You might be caused to a more structured way of working in your country, and there is no status and rank and no hierarchy are much less important in Kiwi workplaces than elsewhere. Management style is usually informal, and so is the workplace. Well, we dressed quite casually, probably more so than you are used to, and regularly mix socially with the people from work. Many workplaces have a relaxed atmosphere, like a family atmosphere. Next one is working together. Because teams here tend to be smaller, getting on with the other people at work is very important. Having quick chat before starting your work and get involved in conversation at the break times will help you to become a part of team, and it creates good connections and makes working together much easier. Networks and contacts in the wider work environment are also very important in Kiwi's workplace. So it's good to meet people at social and other events like training and presentations, and you will be amazed how helpful it is to know people in other organizations. Next is balancing work life and family life. Working hard is important in Newsline, but so is making good use of time outside work. Life is for living, and employees generally respect that, which is why New Zealand workers enjoy about the best work-life balance in the world. Nearly 90% of people say that their employer would let them take off occasionally for special events involving family, according to survey by New Zealand Families Commission. Work condition in New Zealand. Weekly duration. The legal weekly working hours in New Zealand is 40 hours per week. No worker is to be made to work beyond this duration unless paid an overtime wage. Working condition in New Zealand can be decided by the employee. Next is retirement age in New Zealand. According to the National Superannuation Scheme, older adults may receive a pension at the age of 65. However, residents' requirements may differ. This does not mean that there is a specific age at which a citizen should be retired. Moreover, it is illegal in New Zealand for an employer or business to force their employee to retire. Next is work contract. Employers must follow by law. There is some work contract in New Zealand, which are what's the minimum wages for employee if he is under 18 or below, what is the minimum wages for an employee who is 16 or 17 years old. The agreement must ensure that male and female employees are paid the same amount. After an employee spends 12 months at job, he must be allowed to 4 weeks of paid annual leave. If any of the 11 annual holidays of New Zealand falls on a work day, the employee must be given a paid leave. Next is minimum wage. According to the latest available data, the current minimum wage is increased to New Zealand dollar 16.5 per hour according to government rules. Next is workplace hazard to watch out. There are some workplace hazards to watch out. First of all, physical workplace hazards. The workplace environment present different level of threats to workers. Physical hazards are obstacles, objects or elements that present potential threats. Next is chemical workplace hazard. An unfortunate habit by companies that deals with the chemicals is stop spilling them and some chemical to make hazards in overall the employees. Next is social workplace hazard. Workplaces are dynamic. You could have the best safety process but still experience many workplace accidents. Next is ergonomic workplace hazards. Non-impact injuries from overextraction are leading cause to joint inflammation and pain. Next is biological workplace hazard. When working with animals, people or plants, you can encounter the biological hazard. They include viruses, bacteria, injuries sustained from animals.
Next, we are going to talk about the employee retention schemes which was followed in New Zealand. As we all familiar with the word employee retention, which means retaining the employee within the organization. The first one is bonus linked to team performance. In an organization, a good team is organized to perform a particular target. If it's performed well, they are get a high return and a reward. Next one is bonus linked to individual performance. This is basically influenced as the individual performance. If an employee performed well, he is also get a bonuses and rewards. Next one is recognition in other ways. Examples, employee of the month. Such awards and rewards is given to employees for retaining them in the organization and improvise their performance. Next one is commission schemes. Certain commission schemes are followed by the organization which was held in New Zealand. Next one is non-cash bonuses. For example, a paid holiday, tour and travel visit, such that this will motivate the employees to retain within the organization and motivates their performance for the success of an organization. Next important topic is ending employment, which was held 7 and more points. First one is resignation. Resignation is the process where an employee gives notice to their employer of their intention to stop working for the employer. This is a familiar term, resignation, which means the employee is ready to exit the organization. Resignation is happen when only if the employee gives a notice to the employer accepts the notice and allow him to resign the organization. Next one is abandonment of employees. An employee may have abandoned their employment when they are absent from work for an extended period of time without explanation. Not all unauthorized absences are abandonment. Abandonment is a familiar term, as we all know that if an employee is not attending the organization for certain days without informing the employer, this is known as the absence which he is not conveying his employer. During this time, the employer informed the employee to come in the organization. If he is not responded, abandonment take place. Abandonment take place in two ways. First of all, the employer informed the employee through email or telephonic conversation, why are you absent and for what the reason, why are you responding for my mails. If the employee is not responding for the mail, the employer take necessary actions like sending him email or in phone calls informing him that he is no more willing to work in the organization. This is known as abandonment of employment. Next topic is constructive dismissal. A constructive dismissal is where an employee feels they have no choice but to resign. This is a forcible dismissal that the employee himself is not willing to exit the organization, but for certain reasons he must be want to dismiss from the organization. There are three broad categories. The employer gives an employee a choice between resigning or being dismissed. The employer deliberately in a way aimed to persuade directly or indirectly the employee to resign. The employer has acted badly, breaching the agreement of treating the employee highly unfairly. Then the employee feels he or she cannot remain in the organization. The constructive dismissal is forcible dismissal. Next point is retirement. An employer cannot force an employee to retire except in very limited circumstances. In Newsline, common age for retirement is 65. If the employee is willing to continue his work, he can continue as per the agreement prescribed. This is known as retirement. Dismissal. An employer may end their employee's employment via dismissal. For example, misconduct or redundancy, but a proper process must always be followed. In certain cases, the employee is not willing to perform as per the prescription of the employer. Certain misconduct, redundancy which was happening in the organization, at that particular moment dismissal happens. Reason to dismiss an employee such as serious misconduct, repeated misconduct, performance issues during trial period, redundancy, that are some reasons for dismissal. Redundancy. An employer must follow a fair process whenever they want to make an employee redundant. That is, there is no need for an existing employee to be continued. There is no such role to be performed by him. For example, if an organization give a project to an employee, if he completed that particular project, his job in that organization will over. He is no more to continue. That means redundancy. Giving notice. To end an employment relationship, notice must be given by one party, the employee to employer, to another party. That means when an employee is entering into an organization, a particular notice or document is submitted to the employer that his period of extension in the organization. If the employee is want to exit the organization or the employer want to exit the organization, a particular notice should be given by one party to the another party. When only the employer accepts the notice of this employee, then only he is able to exit from the organization. That is giving notice. Final pay. When an employee is leaving employment, their employer must calculate their final pay. If an employee is completing his work and exit from the organization, the final pay must considered. What are the final pay must include? These are the criteria which was included in a final pay, which was payment for all the housework since at last pay until the end of the employment, payment of annual holidays, public and alternative holidays owing, by additional lump sum or other payments owing. They may be included in the employment agreement or negotiated as a part of leaving package. These are the criteria which was included in ending employment. Thank you.